web soil survey site. Give us a second to transition. There it is.
All right. Have any of you used this site before? The professionals. All right. Have you ever wanted soils information for a project on your property? Most people, yes, right? Okay. So Web Soil Survey has nationwide soil data. So anywhere you want in the United States, you can get soil data. There is a lot of information on this website. The biggest problem is usually finding that one piece of information that you want. So we're going to go ahead and start Web Soil Survey. Hopefully it zooms in better. If not, I'll figure it out. Okay. So it will bring up the entire United States. And there are a couple of different ways that you can get to your property. One is just you can zoom in, you know, about where it is, just zoom and look and try to find it. You can also put in your address. So if we use Pat's again, what was that?
8570 East State Route 73, Waynesville, Ohio 45060.
It will pull up that address. Depending on the size of your property, you may need to zoom in or out to see the entire property. But it'll just give you the overview. Now you can actually go in and draw an area of interest. And this is gonna be really hard to see, but there's two little dots here with some red on it. If your property is a rectangle, you can just draw a rectangle. Who has a rectangle shaped property? Yes.
Yes,
What?
one of my words.
Is it north, south, or east, west? Perfect.
East, west.
Usually ready to it might be skewed. Yes. But you can go in here and I'm going to do a multi-shape. Let me see. That didn't actually increase anything.
I wonder if I change the zoom on.
Does that help?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there's this AOI, area of interest. If you don't select like your property, you'll get a big area of data. If you can hone in close to where your property lines are, it narrows down the information that you have to look at to just that area. That's kind of the benefit of this. I'm going to zoom back out here. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at this area around Pat's office. So I'm going to draw this really roughly. And create an area of interest. Now it will highlight the area that I'm going to look at. And you can actually save this as a map and use it. Or you can get more detailed information and save the map. So I'm going to get some more information here and I'm going to go to a soils map. So along the top in these tabs. And it's going to change my view. So instead of giving me that cross-hatched overview area, it's going to actually show me my soils for this area. And I can't scroll right or left.
You're zoomed down.
Thank you. Except I'm going to zoom back in. Now on the soils map, it's going to give you a code. So if you see that XEB, that's our soil type. It doesn't mean a whole lot to anybody. I don't know what that one is. Xenia. Xenia silt loam, Southern Ohio till plain 2 to 6% slopes. So that's the soil we want to get some information on. Maybe we're planning a tree planting. And we want to put it in that area. We want to see what our soils data is like so we can figure out what trees to plant. I can click on this and it will give me general information about Xenia silt loam. So it gives us this nice table. We're gonna zoom in again. There is all kinds of information you can pull out of here. And again, the biggest issue with web soil survey is finding that one piece of information you want. The best piece of advice I can give you is to get on here and click everything there is and see what it gives you. So that's how I learned how to use the site, is I just went in and started clicking buttons. And then wrote down the ones that I found that I needed so that I could find it again the next time I went in. But this is some general information. So if I'm looking for a tree planting, things that I'm looking for as a forester is I'm going to look at what's my texture? The silt loam. Does that mean anything to anyone in here? Is it good, bad, okay? Anybody farm? So your loam is pretty good. It's pretty good. Silt loam is a really good soil texture for holding water, allowing roots to grow. It's probably one of the best soil textures you can get for agriculture because it holds a lot of nutrients, makes a lot of nutrients available. So we've got some information there. Properties and qualities. We'll have some information on runoff, drainage class. So the soil is moderately well drained. It's not going to pond unless we get a ton of water. And so that helps pick different tree species of how much water they can support. Frequency of flooding. This is not likely to flood. So probably not something you're going to have to worry about. Available water supply is high. The trees are going to have a lot of water available unless we go into a really deep drought. And then it goes into some minor components. I usually don't do a whole lot with this. If you guys think about taking the United States and mapping the soils, you can go to any level and a soil can be different 1 foot away from where you are. So it's generalizing that bigger area. So they're saying most of the soil in this little map area is going to have these characteristics, but you might find a few little pockets of this. And I usually don't worry about those. So that's usually not a huge deal. But it gives you this information up front. And I'm sorry, I hope I don't make anybody sick. I'm probably gonna be zooming in and out. I'm actually gonna go into the Soil Data Explorer. This is where you can pull reports on just about anything you can think of related to soil. So if you notice over here, we have all these different categories of information you can pull to that soil. So of course, I'm a forester. I like vegetation. So I'm gonna go ahead and click this one for now, start. And it's gonna give me some options of things that I can look at. So a lot of times I will go into this Forest Productivity Tree Site Index. This gives you an idea of how good that soil is for growing different species of trees. So if I click on this one, it's going to ask me what tree species I want to know how it will do that. So we can look at several different options here. I'm going to go ahead and pick white oak, because I like white oak. And I'm going to view this rating. And we're going to zoom out. It's going to give you a report that's color coded. So different colors will mean different things. And then at the bottom, it tells you the rating. So our red here, what is that? Sorry, I did not bring my glasses. FHA. Okay, so FHA, that red, your rating is 73. Not that great compared to what is blue and 90. And so the higher the number, the better the quality that soil is for that species of tree. If we change our tree, and let's go ahead and look at Pinnoc.
That
Change our
number,
X.
that number, by the way, means how tall that species should be able to get in 50 years on that site. So if it's a 73 and you planted a white oak, then the data says on average they'll grow to 73 feet in 50 years. So So they all have a base age of 50 when we're looking at that.
Now I told it Pinnoc. One soil is poorly rated, the others, you shouldn't plant it at all.
Julie had it.
So
Yeah.
could you use this, if you're trying to figure out, if you didn't have when you bought your property, how much your trees or your wood, your timber has increased in value? Could you try to figure it out based on what it says as far as how a tree would grow? Like like we have an area that has a lot of black walnut. So if we look at it, I would assume if we did this, that it would tell us that the black walnut does good there. And if we knew that it was gonna grow from 50 to 90, and whatever you said, could we backdate that
That's mainly just height info, and really, once a tree gets to that height, then it's more about diameter growth, and I don't think that would give you the level of detail you need for any of that. Stephanie, I had a question on the Zoom too. And they asked if there is a way to get the soils map layers onto either Google Earth or to My Land Plan. And I don't know any, other than you can trace in some of the property.
You may be able to go to the USDA and get that layer and import it. I don't know. Maybe able to ask that at your local office.
Yeah, we'll do some checking on that, because that's not something any of us have done. So I don't know if it's available or not. So we'll do some checking. If we figure it out, we'll post that on the site with the info after the meeting.
You can direct download. That would be, I'd have to play with it.
So there's go back to your question, right above the one you have there, there's a forest productivity cubic feet per acre per year. Could that be a potential for backdating your growth? It's probably gonna be limited by whatever trees are available.
So the cubic feet per acre per year is a measure of pulpwood volume.
Okay.
The problem is this is generalized.
Okay.
And so it's not going to be specific to your property. It probably wouldn't hold up well.
Okay.
The best way to do backdating would be to work with a forester where they core the tree to see how much it's grown and actually estimate what volume it was at the time you purchased.
Okay.
And that'll vary a lot by management. So if you're managing it, it's going to get there quicker. If it's unmanaged, past land use, all that stuff varies. This is just a broad generalization. So the ballpark, but I wouldn't trust it too far.
Yeah. So the other interesting things that are on here is there's some recreational aspects. So if you want to put in a path or trail, you can view the rating for that. And green is usually good, red is usually bad. But down here, it will actually tell you the reason why it's good or bad. And so like this one, let's see. We are very limited on some of these because it will pond and it gets saturated. And so your trail is going to be really mucky if you put it in there. You may have some erosion issues. Some of these other ones, I mean, there's no reason why it's not good. It'd be fantastic to put trails in. So there's all these different recreational aspects you can look at: picnic areas, playgrounds, motorcycle trails, camp areas. So I don't know what you plan to do with your property, but it helps you look at some of the soil limitations or benefits to some of the soils on your property. There's a lot of different tabs here. So we're looking at suitabilities and limitations for using the soils. You can get different properties of your soil. So I will use this to get pH. Some trees like acidic soils, some trees like basic soils. So I can go into chemical properties, and this is where you just have to click buttons and figure out where it is. I taught at Hocking College for a while, and I would do a web soil survey activity that had like 3 pages of questions they had to find. And they're like, well, where do I find this? Like, start clicking. Figure it out, that's your assignment. But you can go ahead and look at your pH. So this one, you do have to put what depth you're looking at. So usually look at the surface layer. There it is. And down here, your rating is your pH. So these soils are 5.9 to 6.5, so it's fairly close to neutral.
We do have a couple of questions and
Okay.
statements. There's actually Jeremiah, and I gotta turn this way so you can hear me on the mic, gave a link, which I can put in the chat, that says they can actually go to this link and get the wetland layer and pull into Google Earth. So I'll share that here in a little bit. And then Linda asked, what does the 1.0 rating mean on the maps that you shared?
What were we looking at?
Oh, I can't remember. I think it was the trail one. Yeah, see it in parentheses behind there. And I don't know the answer to that one. Here it is.
Numerical ratings are the severity of the limitation, ranging from 0.01 to 1. So that means that it is most severe.
It's very severe.
It's a very severe limitation. Like depth to saturated zone here is only 0.5. So it's not as severe as some of these others.
So if it's a 0, it's not severe at all. If it's 1, it's bad, and then there's all of it.
Yep.
And then one more question: how is the information gathered, and by whom, and how often is it updated?
Yeah, so it's gathered by, I believe it's the Geological Survey. Natural Resources Conservation Service has done a lot of the mapping. It's gathered currently remotely. This was a lot of employees putting in soil pits across the United States back in the 50s maybe, where they were ground truthing and checking the characteristics of these soils. As for being updated, probably not very often. So if you're in an urban area, it's probably not going to reflect that very well. And it may just tell you it's an urban soil, which means it looks nothing like what we would expect for a soil to look like. In general, it seems to be pretty good. I haven't had any major issues with it looking in woodlands. So sometimes you'll get to a site and just wonder why, and then you realize it's been mined. And what was surface is now over there in a pile, and you're not working with that anymore. But overall, it seems to do a pretty good job. Have you had any issues with it?
I only have one property where, yeah, it was due to past management use where the soil that was there was no longer there. So, other than that, it's pretty accurate. And I know, just since I work there, right, those areas where it says red and it does some ponding, it does pond there. I mean, after rain, there's water laying there, especially in the spring. So it's pretty accurate, at least for that property.
Stephanie did mention that they're mapped in fairly large units, so you've got areas within them. It's not totally uniform. That's kind of an average. So that's the other thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. So the other thing is, if you want to save your map, so if I go to intro to soils, this is just going to give me my basic. No, it's not going to give us soil map. This is going to take me back to my first map I was looking at with my soils. I can do a printable version up here in the corner, and it will let me save it as a PDF. We're just going to save that as text. View. Let it think for a bit. You probably will have to allow it to pop up. let's try this again. And it will give you a PDF that has the map, the summary table of your soils, and the legend of what everything means. So here's our nice map. We have our legend. And then that little table that tells you the names of the soils. Then you can save this and have it for reference later. You can also save some of the reports. So if I go back to Soil Data Explorer, again, if I'm planning a tree planting, I can generate a soil report for that vegetative productivity that we looked at earlier. And so if I want forest land productivity, this is going to lump all of those tree species together and give me one report of how those trees do in each soil. I'll view this report. And I now have this nice table of how different tree species do in each of those soils. And try to zoom in a little bit. It'll give you the soil over here, which I blocked, different species, that height rating that Dave was talking about. So here, I mean, black walnut, I shouldn't look at that. Black walnut will grow to 78 feet on average at 50 years. Northern red oak, 86. So I'm probably gonna pick the red oak over the walnut on that site. And then it will give you common trees that will do well. This also goes back to how often it's updated. You guys notice some of these list white ash? Probably would not pick white ash and plant on that. But when this list was created, we did not have emerald ash borer, and it would have been a great species to plant on that site. So we'll list some good species. And this is called trees to manage. So things that will do well on that soil type, you can favor and expect to do well. And you can print this as well. So you can do a printable version of the soils report. And it will save your forest land productivity tables with all of that information on it. This one doesn't save the map because it didn't color code anything. So that's where you want to save your soils map, compare it to this list, and get your trees to manage. You can also look at environmental plantings and windbreaks. If you want to plant stuff and you don't know what to do, it'll give you a similar table. And it actually breaks it out by expected height. So maybe you're under a power line and you want things that are going to be less than 25 feet. It'll give you a list of things that you can pick that are expected to do well. Now this, again, you have to use it with a little bit of common sense, so don't plant your ash. If it tells you autumn olive, don't plant that either. There are some invasives that might be in there. We probably aren't going to recommend blue spruce right now because they're not doing so good in Ohio. But I mean, otherwise, if we look at this and we want a big tree, we've got quite a few options here that we can pick from that'll do well on that site. If we want shrubs, 8 feet or less, we can go through and pick some of those. The northern spice bush, red osier dogwood, gray dogwood, nine bark, silky dogwood, black chokeberry, cranberry, elder. So we have a list of shrubs as well. And then you can save this as a report and print it off and come back to it later and have a nice list of opportunities. The problem is, if you guys noticed, there are so many options in the menu. So, I mean, we can look at all of this different stuff on here and it's just clicking until you find that one you wanted.
We had another question, a couple of questions. One, does Pinnoc have timber value? Who wants to take that one? Go for it, Stephanie.
Low. timber
Very
value.
low. Pinnoc does not self-prune its low branches, and so you rarely have a piece more than a foot long without knots all throughout it. And I don't think the wood quality is good either because it grows so fast.
How is it as far as mast?
Mast is pretty good. They're small little acorns that are great, especially for wood ducks and woodpeckers and a lot of species. So for masts and for wildlife on those wet sites, you can't beat it. Well, swamp white oak, I'd put in with it, but, so, yeah, that's an option.
Yeah.
Susan,
For mushroom production.
yeah. So the comment from the audience was, Pinnoc can be good for mushroom production too. And then another question. Question about ginseng. Does it include non-timber forest products like ginseng?
I haven't found non-timber forest products on here, but I also haven't really looked for it.
I haven't seen it either. I think if you do a little homework and learn what species of trees and shrubs are often associated with those, like ginseng, there's certain tree shrubs, ferns, and herbaceous plants. That's probably the way you go there. But certainly, you can get a lot of information off this site. I'm trying to keep up with all these.
That one doesn't have much information.
And then the next question is, are there considerations given for wind? I find that I am very windy and there are limits to planting due to the wind. So this is just the
Yes.
soil.
Actually, there is some wind throw stuff. Give
Okay,
me a second, I'll get back.
okay.
There's a download soils data. You can download soils data for your area of interest. Create a download link to create a soils data download package. I don't know what format it comes in though.
So we'll do some homework on that, and if we figure it out, we'll post instructions on the posting for today's event. We'll do a little PDF document that'll tell you the steps that we figured out and where to work. But we're probably gonna have a hard time getting all that detailed today.
If it is a zip file. So we'll look at that later and put that in there. I'm gonna try and find that wind throw data. It is in there somewhere. I have found it before.
Is it under that windbreak piece?
We don't have any sort of search tool or.
Hmm. Oh. We can search by forest land. I've never done this before. See what it brings up. That's another one I probably have to mess with and see if I can find it again.
And I believe the land management piece, if you're considering a harvest, the logging information
Wind throw hazard.
is right there. Yeah.
All right, so we do have wind throw hazard rating. Again, green is good, yellow is okay, red is bad. But it breaks it out by soil and then it'll tell you the reason why you're likely to get wind thrown. So if we combine all of these, I'm guessing if we have more than two, we're probably running a pretty good risk of having trees come down. You're on a steep slope, it's really shallow, or high water table. You're likely to get some more erosion, wind through. So yeah, it is under there, under land management. Yeah, again, if you go in, you can spend forever just clicking buttons and finding random pieces of information.
If you're thinking about building trails, roads, logging, that
Yeah.
stuff's all there, and that can be very, very helpful.
Yeah, there is suitability for log landings. So if you're planning a timber harvest, you can figure out where the best place for landing is. Here, it looks like they're all about the same, so how does it look on the ground? You can do skid trails, I believe. Yeah, well, haul roads and log landings. For roads with a natural surface, which would probably be a lot of your skid trails. And it's gonna be similar to your log landings where it's all pretty similar. But one of the good things with this is it actually tells you what the rating reason is, so it can help you overcome some of those. So if you know it's wet and that's your limitation, maybe you bring in some mats and put them down, you can drive over the mats and then pull them out when you're done. And you've kind of mitigated that reason. Yeah?
Columbia Pipeline.
Yeah, probably keep going along with that.
811 on that one. Don't take any
Yeah.
chances with that.
Yeah, it's a lot of really cool information in one website. You can narrow it down, get at least your property lines close and get that information for your property. We do this a lot with planning in forestry. It's just pull up some of this information to see what that land is capable of.
It gives you a baseline, gives you a place to start, so it's all good info.
Yep.